2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It's been a little while since I've caught up with this man publicly. He is just a fine choice on all things rock and roll and football, and I made the wise choice of tuning him in on Monday at 3 p.m. after the latest Lamar show. Mike Silver's been my friend for 2 decades plus, about as long as we've been winning Super Bowls around here, Silver. Man, never been number one on the power rankings till now. The good times. These are the good times, Mike Silver. We're going to Hollywood this week, man.
The Ravens have some big games coming up, and I got out of the power rankings business, which spares me, death threats because I had the Chiefs at 13 instead of 11 and important things like that. And as a guy who is a proud alum of the University of California, who literally lost out on the Holy Grail, a Rose Bowl in 2004, partly because of rankings, I try to assure NFL fans that just be happy that it doesn't matter where other people put your team in their minds, because it will all be resolved via, a playoff system. But, I've actually lived it where rankings do matter. But, yeah, no, it's cool. The Ravens are, they've got a couple of losses, one understandable, one will go down as a bad loss, but they have played really, really good football for most of the season, and I think they're getting better.
Oh, look, you've watched this a long time. Let's go top to bottom here on how organizations work and owners work. And when Eric DeCosta and Ozzie Newsome concoct this thing that if Lamar's still there, I mean, look, if they were in love with him, they would have taken him with the Hayden Hurst pick, right? But now that we're 18 months out on this, and they did something no other organization was willing to do, which is completely retool their organization for a style that no one has ever won with at this level. And it's paying incredible dividends right now. But this time last year, Harbaugh was getting fired, right? This time last year, Flacco was leaving and we had no idea what was going on. It's amazing how quickly, and to your point, 6 weeks ago you lose to the Browns and everybody's like, what the hell's going on? Once it starts to click and things start to work and you start even hitting the lottery, getting Marcus Peters somehow on a trade, and trades didn't exist 10 years ago in the league the way they do. Boy, they've really managed this thing well, top to bottom. This is an organizational 8-2 as much as it's a Lamar Jackson 8-2.
Well, first of all, I'm not so sure that getting Lamar Jackson wasn't ownership driven. So
okay.
I want to give Steve Bisciotti some credit here, and I've always really admired the organization, and obviously with Ozzie Newsome, they've had one of the best GMs for a long time. Now with the torch passed to Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh, you're right. A year ago, people thought, okay, they're going to blow it all up. It's over. He would have gotten another job elsewhere very quickly, but that was really cool to see how that played out. I will quarrel with the statement that nobody's ever won with this style before, because Greg Roman and Colin Kaepernick, for Jim's brother in San Francisco, had a pretty good couple of years in 12 and 13. As Ravens fans know, they were a few yards away from winning a Super Bowl. They were a couple inches away from getting back there the next year after that great play in the end zone by the Seahawks thwarting them. But there are a lot of similarities to what Greg Roman was doing with Kaepernick in those years and what's going on with Lamar now. And, they have two coordinators at a very high level right now, because Don Martindale is doing tremendous work on the defensive side. And, the Peters trade really allowed him to play things differently, and then you add in the return of Jimmy Smith. So now they've got so much ability to cover that they didn't have before, and obviously now that's three corners they have faith in, because Humphries has been terrific, and so now they weren't really generating the kind of pass rush they wanted without blitzing consistently, but they have much more freedom to mix in the blitzes, which you saw against Brady and against Deshaun.
Mike, we talk a lot about Lamar, and I'll get to him. We usually start with him, but I'll save him like sort of Stairway to Heaven for the encore part of this. But the defense and Wink, and you've watched this with Wink from Oakland and Denver and all the places he's been, to find himself in a position here to be multiple with smart guys. But I do want to go back to Josh Bynes and LJ Fort coming in and starting right away and being impact players. Then the deal for Peters and him coming in and obviously being an impact pick six player right away. And even last week, Damata Pecco and picking up Ellis. They're pro personnel guys to be able to plug and play in the middle of a season. That's a lot of snaps being taken up by guys who weren't, let alone training camp. They weren't even on the football team Labor Day.
Yeah, and let's not forget they lost a lot. This is a defense. They lost Zadarius Smith, Terrell Suggs, Mosley,
Weddle.
Weddle. Well, I would say I'd trade Weddle for Earl Thomas. No offense to Eric, any day. But I mean, to lose your middle linebacker and two edge rushers like that, and I think Suggs was a surprise to the Ravens. I think they just thought he'd come back and that would be that. And he's obviously a lot older, but still seems to be impacted the game. So you lose a lot that way, and they've managed to figure it out. And adding guys late and having them be at this level and be able to fit in has been a real bonus.
Well, I mean, some teams are playing checkers and some are playing chess. I mean, obviously on the night when everybody left back in the spring and Eric DeCosta wakes up and I'm on the radio reading rights for the 2019 season, and 6 hours later Earl Thomas is coming in, right? And the same thing would be said about the secondary and what they looked like against Baker Mayfield. Then all of a sudden Marcus Peters comes in, and then you came in. I think I saw you in Seattle, right around that period of time. Earl Thomas comes out there. They turn it around. They beat New England. And, all of a sudden we're on this purple carpet ride right now on our way to Hollywood for Monday Night Football. Here comes Marcus Peters back in a purple jersey. I know you have a relationship with him as well as Earl Thomas from around the league and your work at NFL Network. We don't even know these guys, right? I mean, barely know them at all. And Earl Thomas, it felt like it took a little time for a big adjustment for him, a big adjustment for the team. And Wink has been adjusting everything about this week by week by week with the likes of Peters and Ford and Bynes and Jimmy Smith, who wasn't on the field most of the year. All of these moving parts, and yet it looks like this thing's improving very, very quickly.
Well, I got to go to Marcus's first two games, as fate would have it, with the Ravens, so that was fun. I've known him pretty well for a while. He came to my Super Bowl party last year on the Wednesday, which, given that he was in the game, I felt pretty psyched about that. And, I understand what the Rams were doing. They felt like they had a chance at Ramsey to get someone super special, and they had to dump salaries, and I'm a huge Talib fan too. He was obviously injured, but that worked out really, really well for the Ravens and really allowed them to, much more leeway to mix in the blitzers. And so, it's been really cool. And, what I like a lot about Lamar is that he's very willing to do it different ways. He's not caught up in what people are telling him he should do. Oh, he needs to be a pocket guy, or he should be this. He seems perfectly content to throw it most of the time in a given game, or to run it a bunch, as he did against the Bengals the first time around, or mix it in judiciously. And he really doesn't seem caught up in other people defining him, which I think is one of the coolest parts of all this.
Well, I mean, defining him would have been everyone else saying you're a wide receiver and Marty Morningwig and whatever was said or wasn't said, and the Ravens had a press release on that. But didn't most everyone say, kid, you'll make a nice wide receiver? Isn't that sort of what the story of him falling in the draft? How many teams really were willing to bet on him as a quarterback, and let alone turn their organization over to him? Because it would have been a much hotter commodity in the first round than the last pick of the first round had you put the crystal ball in 18 months. But the Ravens have done all the other work, right? I mean, it's about Roman, it's about the line, it's about Mark Ingram, it's about all of this working, and it's about him getting better and being relentless. But it's also, he's been really good with the ball, not only in the air, but they've just taken great care of the football.
Well, the make him a wide receiver thing, I think that's an over-dramatization. You did have some people who, came out and said things like that were, a little, harken back to an earlier era, I would say. But, I think there were a lot of people who understandably thought, is he ready to make a quick adjustment to the pro game, given what he was doing in college, and, is he raw? And also, I think most of all, there were just so many other options that year. So you had Baker Mayfield, who obviously, was a unique kind of, personality, and a guy who had ascended from walk-on status and had the height issue, but really threw it nicely. Darnold, more your classic pocket guy, maybe with some deceptive movement. Josh Allen, who little did we know, he falls into the running quarterback stereotype just as much as Lamar. Lamar may be like sickeningly fast and have unbelievable moves, but Josh Allen likes to tuck it down and use his athleticism, and he's a big guy and hard to bring down. So, you had that, and Josh Rosen, who was a polarizing guy and more of a pro-style passer. So that was also part of it. There were a lot of options, but yeah, no, the Ravens deserve a ton of credit. And let's be honest about what was going on. There was an organizational fatigue there toward the incumbent. Joe Flacco's time in that organization had started to run its course, and there was a lot of inertia for change there. So, the other guys were all gone. They could have traded up and made a bold move for one of the other ones. So now the other ones are gone, and the quarterback-needy teams have all, for the most part, thrown their chips in on those four. And now, how far is Lamar going to go? Do we take him at 25? They ended up coming back up and getting him at 32. So they did benefit from that. But, yeah, with all of that said, there were some personnel people, because I know I talked to them before the draft, who absolutely thought this guy could be unbelievably special. And to me, if he's a little raw, it's worth working with him. And, we've seen a lot of raw quarterbacks. The difference now with the raw quarterbacks is that it used to be presumed that they'd sit and watch for a year or two and then learn the pro game that way. But, starting with guys like Alex Smith, who never took a snap from under center in college pretty much at Utah, with Urban Meyer getting thrown in San Francisco. And, we're starting to see it so much more now, where you don't have that luxury of waiting. And really, Flacco and Ryan and that success, really was what kind of hastened that change too. So I think you put all that together in the stew. But yeah, the bottom line is only one team stuck their neck out and went out and did it, and the Ravens deserve a lot of credit. And as I said, I think that was organizational, and I think it starts from the top.
But, Mike, I want to go back, and I don't want to hearken back to another time, but I think even 18 months ago, no matter the quarterback, the style, whatever, I don't want my quarterback running into linebackers 12 to 15 times a game in the National Football League.
Well,
that's not a crazy – no, I'm just saying from an ownership down, that's not a crazy – that if I take this guy, that's what we're going to do or what we're going to allow him to do. There aren't a whole lot of organizations that would have signed up for that, and there's still plenty of people I talk to that say, yeah, it's fun while it lasts, but at some point he's going to get hurt even mildly to the point where he won't be able to be as effective. So, that's the counter-argument, but it's a lot of fun when it's working.
It's a valid point. I mean, I covered Steve Young, so trust me, I know. And Steve Young was a very physical runner, and shorter. It's so
Well,
part
Cam
of it is
Newton, right? Cam Newton was going to dish out as much punishment as he was going to take.
right.
But
Well, and
it didn't work out that way.
some of it is body type. Ben Roethlisberger was able to take a pounding for years and years and years that extend plays. And it's now maybe catching up with him physically, and obviously an arm injury, that's different. But, Cam Newton, it seems to be catching up with him a little more. Then there are guys who are smaller, and, they don't seem, RG3, they don't seem to be able to, last as long. And some of it's just circumstantial. But, I think ideally you don't want your quarterback getting hit like that. Tim Tebow was an anomaly, and I think partly because they didn't view him as an indispensable franchise quarterback deep inside. So are you willing to let him run 26 times in a game, which I think he did during that crazy season? Yeah, maybe. But, ideally you do want to mitigate that. I think right now his speed is such and his running style is such that it's hard not to take advantage of it. The guy that you're shooting for, to me, is Russell Wilson, who has the greatest knack for knowing when to run it, knowing when to buy time via scrambling, knowing when to sit back in the pocket. He just has the most incredible knack I've ever seen. I mean, Fred Tarkenton, I think, is the only guy that I would compare that to, and I think Russell throws a better deep ball, and we're talking about a great quarterback in Tarkenton, and I think I would take Russell. So, to me, that's any of these mobile quarterbacks, I would say look at him and try to be like him. Now, I think a guy like Lamar is always going to run more than a guy like Russell. That's just the way it is. But if you can figure out times to use the mobility to buy time and get rid of the ball and maybe get those rushing attempts down to when you really need them a little more as you evolve, I think that's the best case scenario.
My dear friend Mike Silver joining us here from the NFL Network. You can watch him. You can follow him out on Twitter. Blocktober is over, but don't test him during the holidays. All that pumpkin pie makes him a little spicy. All right, 17 games and the new CBA and the thoughts of the future. I saw Mexico City, the other night, and, I see the league getting around. I've been over to London. I've seen it for real. I'm going to Tokyo next week to see you two in these stadia that exist that I'm sure the NFL would love to put a Redskins-Jets game at some point in 2024. I love a thought of Ravens-Chiefs game in Rio de Janeiro. But, it doesn't feel so exotic, dude. It feels like they might pull this off. They might find some détente, and they might find the 17th game. And Lord knows I might not have to buy these lousy preseason games anymore, right?
Yeah, I guess if we're looking at a 17-2 model, as long as it's collectively bargained, I think that could be a really cool thing. I like the concept of the 17th game being a neutral site game that allows you to build in a lot of things both abroad and in the U.S. We could be coming to some of these towns that don't have teams. And you could also do creative things like selling a season ticket in London. So, they're going to be 8 games in a stadium over the course of a season. You're going to see 16 teams.
Wow, that's a hell of a value. That's cool,
Yeah, right. So, I think all that is the right concept. If the players want 17 and are willing to bargain for it and don't do it as such an added health and safety issue. So obviously they have to sign on, but it's intriguing. I think I'm less caught up in that and more caught up in, I think unfortunately, the last CBA was rushed, and I think the players allowed that to happen in a way that was unfortunate. They finally got a deal on the money, and it was it was late, and there was a lockout, and I feel like they let the league announce it as though it were all but done, and then they just had a weekend to try to hammer out some really important non-monetary things, and then lo and behold, said, man, I wish we'd, maybe tried to fight for this and this and this. So I'd like there to be labor peace. I would love it if it could get done, before a work stoppage or long before, but I think a lot of these, non-monetary issues could be a lot better from discipline to drug policy to all sorts of related issues.
And blackballing Colin Kaepernick, amongst other things. But, hey, we're in first place.
You can't. I don't know if you could collectively bargain for that, but, you could. You could put your foot down in a more unified way if that was a priority.
I'm not even going to get onto that circus last week, but hey, I am coming to L.A. It's my first ever game at the L.A. Memorial Coliseum. It's on the weekend of your big Stanford Cal hate-a-thon out there in California. So, I'm going to sit back, watch some football, and come to California. This is exciting. I mean, I was not expecting this sort of a magic carpet ride. These are the most fun years when you're just hoping to get to 9 or 10 wins and hoping to be decent, and all of a sudden Michael Jordan comes to town. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I hope Raven fans are enjoying it. These things could turn quickly, so hopefully that doesn't happen. And I think they're going to have these tests coming up. So, we live in this crazy world where we draw incredible conclusions based on one game here or there. But we're going to see a sample size here of they got some tough opponents coming up with Rams, Niners, and they have
Rams, Niners, Bills. Rams, Niners, Bills, Jets.
No, don't they have somebody else?
Rams, Niners, Bills, Jets.
Okay, and then they got to beat the Browns the second.
They've already beaten the other good teams. You're thinking about the Patriots and the Seahawks. You already beat them.
Yeah, no, I guess the 49ers have other games. The 49ers still have to play the Saints, I believe.
Dude, I don't know how you would keep it all controlled in your head. You know what I mean? As much as you're running around and flying around and doing all this. Bottom line, I mean, the Ravens, they're near the top of your power rankings, right? Just near the top, right?
I don't do power rankings, but I was at the game against the Patriots, and that was and the Seahawks game. Those were convincing games, and I'm super excited about them. And you are correct. I'm only thinking about one game, and that's going to take place Saturday at Stanford with a U stadium, STANFURD, and let's hope that it somehow goes my way for the first time in a long time.
You know what, man?
I'll be in a much better mood.
I haven't had you on in like 7 or 8 months. I haven't had Jason Cole on in 7 or 8 months, and I've had you on within the hour to poop upon others' alma maters, and it warms my heart. You know what I mean? It makes me want to come to California and stay, Mike.
Well, I'm glad that there are ancillary benefits, but all you're doing is catching me inside of my own psychosis, and it just, it seeps out, especially this week.
All right, man. Take care of yourself. Love you. Appreciate you. Keep up the great work and the great report. We'll be watching and watching on NFL Network as well. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Nestor.
You got it. Mike Silver, my man in rock and roll, football, and life wisdom, and all things intercollegiate sports at the Cal, the real Cal. The one up north, not the one down south. I got to get to the Rose Bowl. I'm going to the L.A. Memorial Coliseum. I got to get to the Rose Bowl. I don't think like I need to get to Palo Alto or I need to get to, Cal or anything like that. Get off the train up north. Freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is what I say. Be nice to Silver on Twitter. He'll block you. And you don't want that because he's too funny. Nasty at WNST.net. I'm out in the bay at Toyota.com. Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. You can watch, you can listen. Luke's on the backfields out in Owings Mills. We get an extra day this week. I'm heading out to Hollywood with my sunglasses on. I'm going to eat legit tacos. I'm going to get some Korean food. I'm going to watch Monday Night Football with a bunch of Ravens fans in a new stadium. So I'm into it. Got a new one last year, too, in Carson, right? So keep adding them. That's kind of why I want to see this international thing. That'd be kind of wild. Grow the game. Why not? Just keep the ticket prices down so people come. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore Ravens football, Lamar Jackson, with people like Mike Silver.